you hear me?
Yeah, shoot.
Okay,
It's coming up.
thank you, sir.
He's the eye in the sky and the ears.
We all watching that.
Right.
He's the Hendersonville cloud.
You're live.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right, we're gonna call the public safety meeting to order. July 12th, 2022 at 5:15 PM. We have in attendance Alderman Russ Edwards. We'll go around the table.
Commander Larry Daniel.
Assistant Chief Jim Jones.
Chief of Operations Jesse Eckenroth.
Scotty Bush.
Peg Petrelli, Alderman Ward 1. Acceptance of the agenda.
So moved.
It's so awkward with two people. All approved.
Aye.
Aye. That passes. Minutes. Approval of the April 12th, 2022 meeting minutes.
I wasn't present, so I'll have to abstain. Do you want to wait to put those minutes on approval for the next meeting?
That's fine.
Okay.
All right, we'll just take that off.
Couldn't get a second. If you made a motion.
Remove that. All right. Ordinances and resolutions. We don't have anything, is that correct? So we're gonna move on to review the city anti-noise regulation. So we, Alderman Dixon couldn't be here and her constituents couldn't be here, so there were some issues regarding, there was noise complaint. So who would like to tackle that? Is that under PD?
Probably, we're gonna be the one to get the call most of the time. So I'm not really, I've kind of read over this and we do get from time to time, we do get complaints from citizens. A lot of times what happens is we find we have a resident who likes to call about a large number of things. And when the officer gets out there, the noise is either very minimal or non-existent. So we rarely run into a situation where it's a noise complaint. We go talk to the resident. They may not even realize it, but I think what sometimes happens is the noise is not at such a high level, but I don't know if y'all have ever noticed this, but a noise at this volume during the daytime is with other ambient noise, it just drowns it out. But at nighttime, the noise carries farther because there's just not so much ambient noise. And then especially if some people are overly sensitive, if you will, then we'll start getting calls. And then there's a lot of people that realize that living in a subdivision and not in the country, there's going to be noise.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, so we've had to explain that sometimes in the apartment complexes that it's not against the city ordinance if somebody upstairs for you gets home at 11 and chooses to vacuum at 12. Probably not the best idea, but if you live in an apartment, that's just one of those things you have to deal with.
Sure.
So, you know, we try to explain it to folks the best we can.
Sure.
And a lot of times what we try to do is get a little bit of concession on both sides to
Sure.
just try to alleviate the problem. Sometimes that works. Sometimes people will continue to call. Sometimes that's a result of having a less than congenial relationship with your neighbor.
Yeah, almost like a dispute type
Sure.
of situation.
And again, a lot of folks are just, you know, there is some noise, but they're just more tolerant, you know, realizing that when you live in close proximity to other people, there's going to be noise.
So I'm looking under radios and phonographs. Probably need to like update this. It gives hours between 11 PM and 7 AM as to annoy or disturb the quiet. So if somebody was going to town during those hours, that would probably attract attention.
It would. And again, I mean, you know, it becomes, and here's the other thing. We have a noise decibel rating in here. So what you're going to come up with a lot of times is somebody says it's bothering them after 11 PM. Fire officer checks with a noise decibel meter, it's nowhere near the limit.
Mm.
you know, that doesn't mean they still might not go talk to the person in an attempt to, like I said, get some
Mitigate.
concessions and mediate the problem. But, you know, at the end of the day, if it's not to the point that it exceeds those decibels, and a lot of times it's not, I mean, it's just not. And then when that happens,
And
there's not a lot we can do.
y'all go out there with an actual device.
Sometimes
to
we
re-
do.
okay.
We don't always go. I mean, sometimes it's just so obvious that
Sure.
it is, or on the other hand, so obvious that it's not. If it's real close and questionable, they have access to a decibel meter and they'll use it. They're not cheap. We don't have, you know, 10 or 15 of them. I think we've got 2 that we have access to that we use. So, I can remember there was a business on Saunders Ferry that we had a problem with. It was, and from the Saunders Ferry side, it was not in violation. But if you went to the houses across the lake on over there off of Cherokee, it was very obvious it's a violation. So we told them, we said, you're gonna have to stop opening these doors and, you know, turning the music up to high levels at 1 in the morning. It just can't happen.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it was, I mean, it was a commercial business and they had patrons, and so they wanted music and they would turn it up.
Yeah.
And they would open their lower doors and it just was that much louder. Of course, it was a straight shot right across the lake.
Yeah.
So, you know, it got to the point that we said, either put a stop to it or we're gonna start issuing citations every time we come over there.
Sure.
And that finally solved the problem, but usually it's not that cut and dry.
Well, probably what we'll do is, there were some citizens that wanted to come to the meeting to voice their concerns. So we'll probably see this on the next agenda again. So we'll just add this to the next, and that way Alderman Dixon can be here as well. And we'll just kind of go from there. So thank you for that. Alderman Edwards, do you have anything?
I don't have anything.
Okay. So B, HFD update.
Sorry, I was writing something down. So basically, I'm a visionary type person. And so my concern is staffing and recruitment retention. This year, when we did our recruitment list, we only had 50 folks that applied, and that's about maybe a third of what we typically get. We have anywhere from 150 to 200 people that usually apply for us. By the time they got through testing and going through the processes, we always have some that don't make it through. We ended up with an eligible list of 23 names. And our testing system has been in place, so I don't think it's anything necessarily wrong with the test. HR buys the test from a third party, brings it in. It's a basic comprehensive exam. It covers a lot of different things. I don't think that exam is an issue. So when I say that, also in that, we certainly understand the city has always done very well with giving raises. This year is a prime example of 6% COLA. We also know that we're in the midst at some point this year of doing a pay study, but most neighboring agencies have also done a pay study. I know Wilson County, WEMA, Mount Juliet, Franklin. Of course, you know, we got to be careful who we compare ourselves to. We can't really compare ourselves to Nashville, but a lot of those agencies have done those pay studies, and their salaries have now leapfrogged ours. And we've always had a very decent benefit package here in the city. So from my perspective, trying to be a visionary person, because over the next 2 to 4 years, we're going to have a lot of turnover in the fire department. And I don't want to speak for them. They certainly can speak to their department. But I know just with years of service in the next 2 to 4 years, we're going to have a lot of turnover. So I do worry about what it's going to look like. I still plan on living here when I retire. As you all live here as well, you should want the same level of services, if not better. I want folks to be better than what we are right now. So long story short, folks that have been hired from 2008 on do not get offered health insurance in the city when they retire. So that's a concern. I've heard that from several of my staff.
PD also.
And again, I'm willing to, we've talked about it. I've talked about it with HR, and of course, we're in the midst of some new folks being over there, and they're still trying to get their feet underneath them. I'm not saying it has to happen today or tomorrow, but I want to start looking at options to help increase those benefit packages. Again, we're good, and it may not always be salary. We may not financially be able to meet pay studies. I hope we can, but what if we don't? If we start reducing benefits and the salaries are not comparable, then I'm afraid these 10-year mark employees are going to start looking, and they're going to start jumping ship. And it's nothing negative about anybody. I just think folks are not as dedicated. I've got great staff. Again, I'm not saying anything negative about them, but if they can make $4 more an hour over there, and their benefits may not be as good, but yet they're making more money and they can help provide for their benefits some other way. So I don't know what we can do as a city, but I don't want to sit here and not have those conversations and try to figure out how we can move forward, whether that's the bridge. I know some of the PD officers are not good with the bridge. There may be some of my staff that are not good with it. Is it buyouts? I know a few years ago we did buyouts for 30-year employees, where you gave, I think it was $500 for regular line folks. And then if they were department head, I think they gave them $1,000 for a year of service.
So what happened in 2008? A decision was made to not,
Correct. I'm not sure.
and what was just a cost
I think
savings?
I don't know how the decision was even made. Chief, maybe I'll spread light on that, but it's kind of like all of a sudden one day it just turned up that had been done. And there wasn't a lot of involvement.
I wasn't chief then. I was a line officer at that particular time, so I wasn't involved in those conversations. And again, I'm not laying blame on anybody. I don't know the history of how it got to that point. My concern is, again, folks that risk a lot, and I'm not saying anybody else does or does not. At the end of the day, we're not trying to take care of them when it gets close to their retirement, when they're bruised, battered.
Well,
Some of our employees, that's been their concern more so than the pay is, well, I'm gonna work here 30 years and now I didn't get my insurance.
Right. Well, I mean, I always talk about my father being in the fire department, my grandfather being New York police. I mean, I will say it, people that are in police and fire, they have a much higher level of stress than an office job based on PTSD, what they've seen, the strain on their body. That is the reality of the situation. Because I know you had mentioned possibly reducing benefits as part of your report a couple weeks ago, right? I'm just summarizing.
Well, I
As a
think,
cost saving effort.
I think there can be a potential hybrid approach.
Okay.
Not maybe a reduction, but a restructuring of how we can do our benefits.
Well, when you have folks go into public safety, they are trading their bodies and their minds for a service to the city. And I truly believe that. Is that y'all's decision? Yes. But they should be rewarded with the safety of being able to live out their retirement with the proper health care based on years of service. So that is shocking to me that there's not health insurance. I mean, that's crazy, especially with, we all know how, health insurance just went out of whack 12 years ago, 14 years ago. And that's not fair to our men and women in public safety. And I think we really need to escalate the discussions on that, like Chief said, and come up with a quick solution for all the reasons that he stated: retention, new hires, whatever. We have to be competitive. And I'll be honest with you, I don't care what other cities are doing. I don't care if they're getting rid of their benefits for whatever. I don't care. This is Hendersonville. We're going to protect our public safety. These folks are very busy here. So, I mean, what do you suggest we do to get this?
I mean, like I said, we've kind of had some discussions in passing, and, there's a lot of moving pieces to this, and I know there's not going to be a simple answer. I mean, just this year, there was $800-something thousand that we had to cough up for TCRS. And I think that same meeting, there was a discussion from a couple of BOMA members about doing something different. And it freaks some of my folks out to hear that, but the folks that are currently employed would be grandfathered. And I basically said that to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think what was meant to be said was we may have to look at a different hybrid plan for new hires, which may mean, and so when you hear hybrid, if you talk about TCRS and you come in the door, then you pay 6% for TCRS. It comes off your top of your salary right out the chute. So that goes back again, if we don't stay competitive with salaries, and now I got to come in and do a 401k or pay 6% for my retirement. Now my salary is going to be less per year because some of my money is going to my retirement.
Right.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
Right.
Again, that's something we have to talk about. And I'm not saying that's not the way to go, but there are some other options. If we're in this pay study, I think I've mentioned this to Mr. Gallo and Mr. Eckenroth in passing as well. Let's say that the pay study comes back and next year's budget, we're a 5% increase. And I'm throwing out a number. I'm not saying that's what it's going to be. And the potential may be there. Other agencies that have gone to the bridge have given up that raise to help fund that. And simply, it might be an opportunity for staff to say they would like that or not. You can't, I'm not eligible for that. It does not apply to department heads. So I don't want to speak for my staff, but a majority of my staff would be in favor of I feel like, of giving up that raise if it would help fund a bridge or potentially a buyout for 30-year employees. Now that's just my opinion and some of the discussions that I've had with some staff. And I just think that we need to start reviewing it, and we have been talking about it. I don't know what steps to take next. Obviously, I'll look for his guidance and Mr. Gallo's. I just want to bring it to the forefront because I do think in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see some problems in public safety with retirements.
Well, if the two departments, if there's a fundamental majority difference in the approach, can they just be treated differently? Can they, with how that's handled? I know it's better to have a massive amount of people than you've got 100 over here and 100 over here. But is that something to explore?
Might logistically be a nightmare for HR. I don't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would think so.
Typically, public safety kind of gets pulled together.
Yeah.
And I think that a good example of what we did this year with insurance is kind of, we kind of took a hybrid approach with insurance, right? Because insurance rates really came up this year. So the city self-insured to try and keep rates low for the employees. And it meant that on the back end, we have a little more complicated administrative process that we have to go through. The city has a little bit of risk in case, deductibles go really high. But when I talk about a hybrid approach, what I'm saying is that I don't know that the city can continue to just do the really easy, hey, everyone gets exactly this, and we just continue that forever. Because had we done that with our insurance this year, employees would have really seen a rate increase in their insurance. And we were able to keep that pretty low by kind of coming up with some solutions to do that, which is more complicated and it makes the process more administratively burdensome. But I think on the benefit side of things that we're going to have to start to look at those things as well, where we say, hey, right now we do option A, but we don't really have like option B or option C or a mix of the two. And we kind of did a mix of some things on the back end for insurance. And that may be the same. That is probably going to need to be the approach that we do for all city employees.
So what is that bridge? What explain that? You mentioned bridge. Explain that to me. how
So,
that would work.
but I'm still trying to learn some of that. There's Paul Warble, the fire marshal, has been on that board. The bridge, and you guys can help out. You're pretty astute to it as well. The bridge is kind of like a gap. I think it's 55 and 25, 55 years old and 25 years of service. And basically that bridge covers that gap of not working till 35, 40 years of being on the job. Obviously there's a lot of risk with that as you get older. Your reactionary times are not going to be as good. Your recovery times are going to take a little bit longer. But that bridge gives you a higher amount of retirement premium. I think it's 70%, 71% of your best five is what TCRS is. And so it pays a higher premium to help fill that gap
Till you get Social
till you
Security.
get Social Security.
Okay. And did you say anybody hired after 2008, they would not be
They're not-
given health insurance?
When they retire, they are not eligible for health insurance.
So there was a pretty big, I think, nationwide push, with what's called OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, which is mainly healthcare benefits. And government agencies are required to document the liability, the financial liability for that. And in some cities, the financial liability was even greater than a pension liability, and was extremely expensive for some cities. So around that time and thereafter, there was a lot of cities who started to really look at the medical benefits that they were offering and start to scale those back because of the financial impact.
So I don't want anybody to think that the benefit package we have is very good. But when we start losing things,
Right.
and then let's say we can't be competitive with salaries, I'm not saying we can or cannot, obviously the pay study will say that, and then the board would have to make a decision on whether to raise it or stay status quo. That's when you start having the folks start asking the question of, well, I can go over here for $5 more an hour. They may have less benefits or equal benefits, but I'm making more money. And people's mindset is that if they can make more money while they can, they're going to go make more money while they can.
And I think some of them, their incentive to stay here was when, even though over here they're paying a couple dollars more an hour, if I complete my 30 here and I've already got 10 in, if I do 20 more, I've got my retirement and then I've got my health benefits when I retire. But if that's taken away, and TCRS is portable. I'll give you a good example. Gallatin went off of TCRS. And I'm only speaking for police but I'm assuming it was all city employees. They had gone off of TCRS to 401, 457K. They've gone back to TCRS.
They never did have a 401. They had that, but I don't think they had TCRS on the front end.
Yeah.
They had a 401.
But they had TCRS at one point, and now they've gone back to it.
And they're hybrid.
And yeah.
Where we're legacy for some of us old timers.
Yeah. And so, because they were having problems, and that's what some of their employees were talking about was, you're asking me to stay 30 years to retirement, but what am I going to get when I leave?
Right.
And so, that's the especially when and I think Chief Bush mentioned, when they start hitting the 10-year mark, that's when a lot of them really start looking at, wait a minute, when I get done at the end of my career, what am I going to have? So, because a lot of them, if they do 30, they're retiring at 51, and some of them stay longer. Both of us have, you've been there longer than 30. I mean, you stay longer, but some of them, they're going to get out at 51. They've got to do something to fill the gap between 51 and 67. And one of the issues some of our employees have with the bridge program is you have to collect Social Security when you first become eligible, unless that's changed. And a lot of them are trying to hold off because obviously if you start drawing at your first earliest date, you're going to be on the low end, and you're on that low end for the remainder of your life. And they're like, wow, that's that trade-off is what worried some of our people.
So you come in at 23 years old in fire or police or anything. Think about that. You don't think about your health. You think you're invincible. You think you're not going to have any problems. So you don't worry about your benefits. But as you hit that 10-year mark at 33, now you're married. Now you got kids. And then you start thinking about that. So that, again, is reality to some of these folks is what's keeping me here.
But then what you're saying is when they're when they retire at, say, between 51 and whatever, like, are they having to go out and get like another job because you're waiting for?
Now, some of them,
That might be lifestyles too.
It is. I was going to say that's a big key. Some of them, if they retire and their spouse retires along that same time between their two retirements, they're able to do something. But again, if you don't become Medicare eligible to 65, you got to do something about health insurance from the time you retire. And they may have enough money to survive, but when you start taking today's healthcare premiums out of that, now you're talking about living on, ramen noodles and bologna. I mean, reality.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of them do choose to pursue some type of work just until they can, hit full retirement age. But I think the benefits package when they leave is a big thing.
Do you have a lot of officers, firefighters just saying that they're, after they've been here 10 years or so, that they're leaving?
They're
because
asking
of
the questions now. I've never had it before, but in the last 2 to 3 years,
We talked some out of leaving because of it
Yes,
already, yeah.
I can tell you the 6% COLA convinced one, and the fact that the meeting that Jason had at the PD, that they're looking at other issues, he decided to stay.
so when people start asking questions, that means the thought's there. And they're looking, they're just not sure, or maybe they're looking for somebody to give them something solid to hold on to.
So I think we have a couple things going on here. One is, I think there's really a changing dynamic of the new employees who are coming. And you'll hear the term that it's hard to find loyal employees who will come and dedicate their lives and spend 30 or 40 years, and they're going to hop around to salaries instead. So you kind of have, for the initial recruitment, right? That's a concern because that's a draw. And then once folks get there and they have an investment there, then you have another concern with then how do you keep them there too. So I think right now, you kind of have the workforce right now has kind of different priorities, and some want to stay and they feel that they're very loyal to their organization. They're going to stay. And then you have some that feel like, if I can get $2 more or $3 more here, I'm going to jump ship, So I think, it's easy to talk about. It's a hard problem to solve, but I definitely think that the just single phase approach is, we're gonna have to throw that out the window and start thinking about all these things and how we kind of meet employees across different age groups and keep them happy, keep them working.
Well, if we invest into new recruits on both sides and those folks leave, I mean, that's money walking right out the door. It's a loss. So that's something to consider when you guys move forward. Because when you go through and send them to school or training or academy and this and that and credentials, I mean, and it's really similar with any job. You train somebody or you school them up, and if they walk out the door, you're losing money.
And even past all that, on both sides, it's the institutional knowledge that they
Right.
possess if they leave.
Well, that's the most important.
And even getting them to come for recruitment in the first place anymore.
Yeah.
Fire having low numbers for recruitment is pretty unheard of, because it's, typically for recruitments for any fire department, it's a line out the door because people want to get in. So, considering the extremely low unemployment we have right now, we're also faced with that as well, because there's like 2 job openings for every person out there.
Yeah.
So that makes it even more challenging on top of the other dynamics we have.
And we're not a monster. Other agencies are faced with the same problem. They're not having the high turnout for recruitments either. They're just not.
Our last test day, we had 7 people show up, 5 passed the written test. And we'll be lucky if all 5 of those pass the background investigation before we can hire them.
But on an upside, by the end of July, we will have 10 in the in-house recruit school and 2 at the academy. So
Yes.
that is good. It's tough.
And like I
It's the
said,
lowest recruitment turnout we've seen in years.
I'm not sure what the answers are. And I'm not saying that we don't have a solid program, but I do think folks that don't have health insurance after 2008 is a big deal. And what that looks like, what we can do to help them out, I don't know, but I do think it needs to be kind of on the forefront of individuals' minds.
I would highly encourage you guys really staying on top of that and not necessarily giving concessions, but trying to, whatever differences there are, and I don't know what they are, but get them fixed for the benefit of the whole. Because that really needs to be, I would say, a top priority long past my tenure. So anything else on that? Do you have any more HFD updates?
No.
Appreciate you taking care of business in Ward 1 recently.
You're welcome.
Very scary.
Yep.
All right. So, okay, grand opening for station number 2.
Yes, we've never actually officially had one for that. During COVID, it kind of put a damper on all that. And I've had several folks reach out to me that would like to have that. I just kind of want to throw it out there to see. Obviously, that would mean current BOMA members, and then, of course, the folks that voted for that station to be built. We'd have to invite those folks back. Just it's the right thing to do. Obviously, they're the ones that supported it. But I'm just trying to look for a date. Obviously, I don't think 100-degree days would be a optimal opportunity to invite folks to come hang out at the fire hall, but maybe September, late September, October, maybe pick a Saturday and we'll have a grand opening or something. I think it might be worthy of just a discussion and see if we can't land on a date that would be appropriate for everybody.
What about a Tuesday night?
We do have a training room. You could,
Opposite Boma.
you'll be, well,
'Cause most people are available.
Have a BOMA meeting at Fire Hall too.
I was going to say that was a little bit closer quarters, but
Yeah, like, I would think a weeknight,
Yeah.
like at 6, probably 6 PM, might
Yeah.
have better attendance than a Saturday.
Yeah.
maybe.
Okay.
Just my
well, people
2
with
cents.
families, it's difficult. I get that
Yeah,
100%.
right.
Most folks have Tuesday nights blocked out. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but I've always got Tuesday nights blocked
Yeah.
out for meetings. So if it was opposite a Boma meeting, then 6 PM, and that's a great time because people just get home from work and get over there. And
It might just be as simple as polling the current BOMA members, maybe. Seeing if opposite of a meeting night and then whoever,
I wouldn't poll anybody. I would just make
throw it
a-
out there.
I would
Okay.
just pick a date and go with it because you're gonna get 13 different answers. And then,
Okay.
then you're gonna have
Pick a
a
day.
problem.
Throw it out there and who can
Yeah.
make it can make it. Okay. All right. Maybe you and I can try to pick a date,
Sure.
see what happens.
On a Tuesday.
So
Would noon be a bad time? Is that?
Noon?
Do you want to, would you
Doesn't-
want to do it noon in the middle? of
we're
the day,
there,
or
so
you
it doesn't
think-
matter to
you
me.
think
That wouldn't bother me at all.
afternoons?
During like a lunch hour or something.
Yeah, I'm just saying the Chamber of Commerce a lot of times does the ribbon cuttings and all like a noon.
That would be good.
But I don't know how you would get more attendance at noon, or 6 at night.
I think that just comes down to just saying, hey, this is when we're gonna do it. And if you can make it, great. If not, we won't hurt our feelings and we understand. And that's probably a better option than doing a Saturday for sure, because folks
I don't know.
enjoy their family time and
I don't know if Ham would be able to make a middle of the day.
yeah,
I would want Ham there.
Yeah.
So,
maybe if we gave him advance warning, maybe he could take a longer lunch or something.
Yeah.
But, okay, all right. I'll work on that. You and I'll talk about that and see what we can come up with. If that's okay.
Anything from HPD?
Now, like I said, that's the big thing was our recruits that we have in. We do have one more reserve officer going through too right now, so. But so far they're doing well and they're in-house training. Our 2 at the academy just started, so they're enjoying the fine Camp Sunshine where it never rains, only heavy dew. And they'll be there for the next 12 weeks.
Awesome.
So
And thank you guys for both departments for the whole fireworks thing. How many calls did y'all get?
right around between Saturday and Monday nights, 115 calls. And that's the calls we got. We know there were more fireworks out there. A lot of people do not call. One of the things we ran into, even though the burn ban was not officially lifted, so that's what we were going with. A lot of people just assumed because of the rain that occurred, oh, it's all good again.
Yeah.
What they didn't realize was that, yes, the ground got wet, but it hadn't had time to make the grass not real dry and flammable as well as other things. So
Sure.
we did a lot of education that night.
I bet.
Those nights, and so they responded to an awful lot of calls. And some of them were calls that I don't think the officers actually logged because they'd see it happen and just stop and say, you can't be doing it and knock it off. Because they were busy enough that it was just faster than having that all logged in through the ECC. So
Sure.
those were actual calls that were logged in, was 115.
And we're still in a burn ban, correct?
No,
Is it lifted? Okay.
yesterday. Mhm.
Y'all did a good job with the traffic. I went all the way up to Saundersville Road and I thought it would take me an hour, but it didn't really take as long as
I think we carried it our
Yeah,
fastest time.
it was.
Over the
Since I've been doing
years,
it,
it's
been
gotten
Less than an hour.
faster and faster, but people just have to understand, if you go into a location that has somewhere around 15,000 people and park your car and with limited exits and, it's just gonna take a little while to get back where you belong. So, we have people that get upset that are going to the west end of town that come out in a way that makes them go east.
Mhm.
But here's the reality, if you go east, get on the bypass and go back to that end of town and then come back up, you're gonna be home a whole lot faster.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it,
we did.
it works. It does work. It's, I don't think there's any perfect solution to that, but it does work.
Anything else?
Nothing.
All
Motion
right.
to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.